Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 715 for the 19th of June, 2022. Richard Saunders here, coming to you from Bend, the city of Bend, or just outside the city of Bend in Oregon. I'm visiting Skeptoid headquarters. It's great to catch up with Brian Dunning and family. Haven't seen them for a number of years, largely owing to COVID. And speaking of Brian Dunning, we're going to kick off today's show with an interview with Brian and his Bigfoot. Yes, Brian Dunning is the only person I know who has a giant, dare I say, a life-size scale model of Bigfoot in his front yard. It's quite something. We're going to chat to Brian about his Bigfoot, about the Skeptoid podcast, a long-running Skeptoid podcast, and his recent documentary, Science Friction. Following that, it's the recent Australian Skeptics Newsletter from Tim Mendham, read by yours truly, what has caught the skeptical eye of the skeptics this week. And speaking of Tim Mendham, that's followed up by the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham, where I drop by the Skeptics, the Australian Skeptics headquarters, and chat to Tim about the latest issue of that fine publication, The Skeptic. Of course, the journal from Australian Skeptics. What can readers look forward to this quarter? Then to round off the show, a dive once more into those Trove archives, although this week I think we're heading to the United States and we're going to be looking for references to psychic scams. Yes, look out for those psychic scams. Well, that's enough for me at the moment. It's time for me to run downstairs because I'm actually recording from the very studio that Brian Dunning records his Skeptoid episodes. So yes, I do need to run downstairs and look for some pancakes. Ooh, I wonder if they have any Japanese pancakes here. I'll have to ask Brian. Maybe not. Japanese pancakes, folks. If you haven't tried those, they are a particular favorite of mine. Yum, yum, yum. While I do that, I might have to have Oregon pancakes. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Folks, I often complain about when I'm recording the Skeptic Zone in my own studio that the bloody planes interfere. Now I've got a plane flying over Skeptoid headquarters. Brian, is it the CIA, the FBI? Who is it?
Probably. You know, there's never ever planes here, except when you try to record something.
Tell me about it. We're in Central Oregon. Is this Central Oregon? Yeah, this is the high desert, isn't it? Yeah. It's beautiful. It's apparently it's summertime, but it's quite cool, which it suits me very well. There's snow on the mountains, which is very nice, and we're walking along the roadway here, the gravel path leading up to Skeptoid headquarters, and we've come to a giant Bigfoot. I kid you not. Here it is. How tall is that, Brian?
It's supposed to be 10.5 feet tall, but I don't think it's quite that tall. I mean, that's I'm touching 7'10" here where I'm
right. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it's on a little pedestal, but nevertheless, what an imposing creature it is. It's quite remarkable, and you were even interviewed on local TV news about it or something like that.
Well, I was trying to get some publicity for the chainsaw artist who made it. And then he turned out to be shy, and he didn't want to show up, so it was just me saying, hey, look, I have a Bigfoot. And he's like, oh, like half the other people in Central Oregon.
So to describe it, it's the classic Bigfoot ape human shape. Hello, you got a little crack there that needs some fixing, I guess.
The first few years it's going to crack, and it needs annual maintenance where you cover the whole thing with linseed oil. Yeah. And when cracks do appear like that, that's fine. You just spray oil in them and you let them do what they want to do. And eventually it comes to some sort of a equilibrium.
If you want to see this creature for yourself, folks, just go to the Facebook page for the Skeptic Zone and look for episode 715, and you'll see a photograph of Brian Dunning and his Bigfoot. And you're telling me, I'm just looking at its eyes, but they were pecked out by birds or something crazy.
They were. He's painted dark brown, which actually it looks much better after a few years, because the linseed oil and the paint, they sort of form this crust, and it looks just kind of like a really cool old vintage thing. But for now, he looks like painted wood.
Yes.
Which isn't quite as cool. But since his eyes were pecked right in the center by woodpeckers, it gave him like these big, bright, glowing pupils, which was kind of freaky looking.
Well, it's marvelous addition to the Skeptoid headquarters. It's very impressive. When I come round to the other side, it's very chunky, isn't it? It's a big creature.
Yes.
Yes.
That was the idea, was to make it big and imposing looking.
And it's all made out of one piece of wood, one log.
Yeah, this is from a piece of log that was from the fires we had here in Central Oregon about 2 years ago that were so incredibly destructive. And there was just countless big logs available. So I got this enormous log for $100,
wow.
which is a lot less than it would normally cost.
Yeah. Well, he's done a great job. I mean, it really is impressive. Oh, I see. He's put Bob. Does that say?
It says Mosquito Bob.
Mosquito Bob. Oh, yes. It's a picture of a mosquito, and then the word Bob 2021.
Yep.
Fantastic. So, apart from, this is the most important thing here, of course, but we could also talk about the secondary thing you do, other than putting big feet in your yard. Skeptoid. Now, you must be celebrating quite a number of years of Skeptoid by now.
Yeah, this is year 16.
16. Yes, I'm only a couple of years behind you, I think.
Yeah, you're right up there.
Yeah.
It shows.
Yes, thank you, yes. And what can fans look forward to, some of the topics coming up in the next few weeks, what you've got lined up? Can you even remember?
You don't even ask me that, because I never have any idea. If you ask me what episode I'm working on, I honestly don't know. It's really weird. If
it's
I'm not
one
at my
after
desk,
the other, right?
Yeah, I can't even tell you.
But
something cool.
Undoubtedly. I did enjoy the one recently about The Shining. And Skeptoid listeners will know what I'm talking about, because it only went to air recently, because you made a lot of really good points in that, I think, if you could remember it.
Yes. I do remember specific episodes. Yeah, that one was fun. It was about the supposedly the ghosts at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, which is best known for The Shining, even though The Shining was not filmed there.
But the good points you make in that episode is, people have all sorts of stories. It's like, wow, that's great. But ultimately, so what?
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's just random ghost stories that people just make up. And in the case of this particular hotel, those ghost stories, they didn't even exist until the hotel became popular because of the Shining movie. So they're not even old ghost stories like they pretend to be. And there's just so many stupid made up ghost stories that have, obviously no evidence, but they're not even good anecdotes. And it's like, what is there to talk about on something like that?
And then you'll get Explain That Skeptic.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
I heard about a guy who, XYZ, UFO, flying dogs, ghosts here. Explain that, Skeptic. You can't, can you?
Nope. Turns out the paranormal is true after all.
It must be. And the other thing, of course, which is forefront of your mind at the moment, has been for some years, is science friction.
Yes.
Science friction, which you and I have discussed for the last 3 or 4 years, on and off, as it was in the process of coming together. And I interviewed you on this very show about a month or two back about it. Now it's been out for some time. What's the general feeling?
Yeah, it's been out for 2 months. It's on. It's doing super good in film festivals, which is awesome. It's kind of having a sort of a slow burn, gradual release instead of one big release all at once. It's creeping out onto streaming services one by one. It's on Amazon Prime, Tubi in most countries, and it's on Vimeo on demand in every country.
Right.
So everyone can see it on Vimeo. Rent or buy it, download, whatever. So I'm pretty stoked about some of the film festivals coming up a little bit later this year, actually. So It was way too long getting out and way too long getting launched. But at least it's done and it's available for everyone to enjoy now.
I saw it. I've seen various rough cuts, but I saw the final one on Tubi. Yeah. Because Tubi is very easily accessible in Australia.
Yeah, although I keep hearing some people say they still can't find it. I have no idea.
If they read the latest issue of The Skeptic, the journal from Australian Skeptics, there's a handy URL.
Yes.
Indeed. But how does one go about putting documentaries into film festivals? Is that a whole thing?
No, that's pretty easy to do. I mean, the really good festivals, the significant ones like Cannes and Sundance and South by Southwest, those are all invitation only. You can't just put a movie into those, and you can't just apply or submit. Some of them have, ways that you can apply, but the reality is nobody's going to look at those unless you're, a major filmmaker. There's some big star attached to the film, and this is not that kind of a film. So for regular film festivals, of which there are hundreds and hundreds all around the world, there are a couple of websites, most noticeably Film Freeway, where you can just apply to all of the relevant. You can search and find film festivals that are relevant to your film, and you can apply to them all. And it's just like filling out a shopping cart on Amazon. Check all the boxes and then check out, and you got to pay a whole bunch of entry fees for all the festivals.
Right. Well, that makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah. We also did quite a bit of advertising to festivals, and so we got a lot of festivals who saw our trailer and said, "Oh, that's actually better than 99% of the crap that people send us." So we got into a lot of festivals for free, for just with an invited invitation. An invited invitation.
Yes. I know what you mean.
Particular kind of invitation.
And I'm the one who's jet lagged, and you're wigging out. Well, I must say that I've just been reminded of the time that your documentary, Here Be Dragons, There Be Dragons, Here Be Dragons.
Yeah.
Here Be Dragons. And my documentary, The Mighty Midamaster Water Divining Test, was shown at the same festival which was the one in the Czech Republic many years ago. This is the Olomouc Scientific Film Festival. Now, the story is you were invited, you couldn't make it, and you recommended me. And they invited me there, and then I introduced your movie, which was...
God, what year was that?
Oh, at least 10 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
I have better movies these days than back then.
Well, there you are, folks. There's the clue if you don't... you don't need another clue, really. It's a really enjoyable documentary. It's fascinating. You end up applauding and then screaming at the outrageous antics of these TV production crews at times. It's stark, isn't it?
That's the idea.
Yeah.
I want people to watch the movie and come out of it angry.
Well, I wanted my money back as soon as I saw it. I was that angry. Brian Dunning and friend. Let's have another look at the... Just give it a tap for me, Brian. We'll get the sound of Bigfoot. Here we go. There we are.
It's pretty solid.
It is pretty solid. And it's very dark brown, but as you say, that colour will change over the time. Brian Dunning, does it have a name?
No.
No. What would you call it anyway?
I have no idea. My daughter's really good at names. I put her to the task, and she didn't want to name it either, so I think it's going to just be the Bigfoot.
The Bigfoot. Brian Dunning and the Bigfoot. As we walk around the other side. Thank you very much.
Hello, this is Maynard. Did you know that you could listen to the Skeptic Zone on YouTube? Yes, I know, sounds crazy, but it's true. Also, you can hear 40 logical fallacies with Michelle Bickersma and funny sketches with Richard Saunders and a host of other skeptics. Just click on the YouTube links on the homepage at skepticzone.tv.
Here is the Australian Skeptics Newsletter, newsletter number 150. And this arrived in my inbox a few days ago. Written by Tim Mendham. What does Tim have for us this week? Hi all, it says. In a time of trouble on many levels. Climate change, war, poverty, pandemics continuing, inflation, cost of living. Is it still worthwhile to worry about pseudoscience and the paranormal? Well, unlike what some believe, we can actually think about more than one thing at a time. In fact, we probably deal with 50 issues at a time in our normal lives. So what's a couple of other issues thrown into the mix? In this newsletter, we'll cover a lot of those issues. No doubt there will be more pressing things to worry about than some of them, but it doesn't stop us caring and wanting to do something about pseudoscience and the paranormal. Multitasking, here we come. Do something about the paranormal, Tim. That's an interesting way to put it. So how do you do something about something that doesn't exist? Probably doesn't exist. Read on, Tim. Okay, Tim, we'll do that. Skepticon 2022, November 26th to 27th. We're happy to announce that the 2022 Annual Australian Skeptics National Convention, Skepticon, for 2022, will be held at the National Library in Canberra on the weekend of November 26th and 27th. There will also be streaming of sessions for those unable to attend, and social events before and during the convention. Among the key speakers will be an international contingent made up of Claire Klingenberg, Chair of the European Council of Skeptical Organizations and co-organizer of the Czech Paranormal Challenge, as well as the hosts of the European Skeptics podcast. Can't wait for that. All being well, and in this day and age, there are always the possibilities of changes. It will be the first face-to-face convention since 2019. We look forward to seeing you there. Further details and ticket sales will be available soon. News items. And don't forget that each of the news items I will mention are accompanied by a link in the newsletter for further reading. Behaviorists must confront psychiatry's pseudoscience. A serious look at psychiatry. Medical scientists attempt to find a psychological basis for mental disorder, but their efforts have failed. That's the quote, with a few exceptions. But how well have psychiatrists filled the gaps? Quote, psychiatry must be held accountable to the rules of science. As behaviorists, we must speak out about what has gone terribly wrong with mental health care. It happened before with eugenics and lobotomy, because of psychiatry's wrongdoing with respect to the scientific method, end quote. Science on why people see ghosts. Long article takes a look at parapsychology and the possible reasons for belief in the paranormal, with comments from both skeptics, Susan Blackmore, and researchers. An interesting piece. Mercenaries inspired by psychic to fight in Yemen. 2 former German soldiers have gone on trial accused of attempting to form a paramilitary group to fight in Yemen's civil war after being inspired by a psychic. They took steps to set up what prosecutors say amounted to a, quote, terrorist organization, end quote, after receiving, quote, messages from a fortune teller that they understood as binding instructions for action, end quote. Not to mention financial gains, which might be another motivation. Predicting the outcome of the war in Ukraine. Psychics and their ilk will never let a good opportunity pass without taking advantage of it. Quote, Putin is dragging his feet with the war. Why does he need that? End quote, asks a card reader. She is one of dozens of prognosis on Valentina Koltsova's YouTube channel. She talks about the future president of Kazakhstan, the character of Belarusian President Lukashenko's son, and Putin's mystery illness. She is one of among a bevy of tarot readers, numerologists, astrologists in Russia, Ukraine, and beyond, who have been making headlines with their forecasts about the future of the conflict, often contradicting each other. Surprise me. Their video and posts are getting millions of views. They are being interviewed by prominent outlets and TV channels, giving their pseudoscientific claims wide exposure. And that doesn't surprise me one little bit. Ghost hunters hit back at Ricky Gervais. Comedian and noted skeptic Ricky Gervais has upset the ghost hunting community by saying there were no such things as ghosts. As part of his Netflix stand-up special, Supernature, Gervais said that ghost hunters have, quote, thousands and thousands of hours of footage and they've never seen a expletive ghost. Not one, end quote. Rachel Parsons of Retford Ghost Hunting says, quote, it's obvious his comments are in jest and not to be taken seriously, end quote. Which means she doesn't take Gervais' skepticism very well. The June issue of the Skeptic magazine, which Tim and I just discussed earlier on in this episode, is out now in digital form and will hit the streets in hard copy soon. And a reminder that you can subscribe to that magazine at skeptics.com.au. You can get the hard copy or the digital copy or both. And if you subscribe to the hard copy, you can get the digital copy for free. And as an aside, I'll say what I do when I receive my digital copy is I copy it into my iPad Books app. So I've got the complete set of the magazine from Australian Skeptics at my fingertips on my iPad all the time. A handy reference. Items of interest. Travel tip. Merseyside Historic City Hall is haunted. It's been nearly 20 years since the most haunted team headed to Liverpool to investigate Croxteth Hall. They're back to see some ghoulies, which gives Liverpool one more string to its bow apart from football and mop tops. Lawyer quits high-flying job to become a pet psychic. A top lawyer... Where do you find these, Tim? A top lawyer jacked in her £60,000 job. It's a nice sum, but it doesn't actually sound like much of a high-flying lawyer. And says that she now speaks to animals. I speak to animals all the time. They just don't answer back much. And she's earning more money than she was before. She says she taught herself to communicate with animals by doing her own research. And Tim says here, that's what he actually wrote, A-A-A-G-H, exclamation mark. And reading a series of books on the practice. What more would you need? During a reading, she sits in a quiet room and studies a photo of the animal and telepathically asks them a series of questions. Woof, 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 meow, meow, woof, squeak, squeak. Tim didn't write that. She records her questions and the animal's responses on her phone so owners can listen back to the full exchange. And here I am wasting my time producing a skeptical podcast. Oh dear. Woof, woof, woof to all the dogs listening at the moment. Psychic reveals why hospitals are the most haunted places, with hardly a mention of hospitals at all. But you do get, quote, she arms herself with a wand crafted from unique healing crystals and sacred spray. She makes herself and nicknames holy water, a delicate mix of prayers and energy from crystals. Surely somebody just put a lot of words into a hat and pulled them out and says, here's the sentence. This is an out-and-out promotion of a Sydney-based psychic and exorcist. Surprisingly, they don't mention quantum mechanics at all. But how can you bombard demons if you don't have a lump of quantum? I've often wondered that myself. Tim! And finally, Hobart, June the 15th to the 26th, an exhibition of miracles. Evidence from miraculous events that have occurred around the world will be explored and discussed by medical experts, and some are real medical people, during an exhibition taking place at the Waterside Pavilion in Hobart. An innovation by the Archdiocese of Hobart, the exhibition titled, quote, Miraculous Events, Science Tests Faith, end quote, will consist of, quote, interactive and documentary-style presentations of more than 20 miracles, including eyewitness testimonies and findings from scientific investigations. The miracles will include inexplicable healings from deafness, blindness, cancer, paralysis, and even death. Somehow having an exhibition of miracles seems a bit weird. Is it one of those industry shows with different stalls spruiking their wares? Quote, our miracles are better than their miracles, end quote. Lots of talks as well. It sounds like a fascinating experience. And that was the Australian Skeptics Newsletter, normally read to you from Canada, of course, by Adrian Hill. Hopefully Adrian will be available for the next one. But we are thinking about you, Adrian. If you want to subscribe to this newsletter and get it delivered to your inbox every other week, just head for skeptics.com.au.
I don't know about you guys, but I really love conferences. Meeting like-minded people in person is always a blast.
Yeah, Andras, I think we all agree. Nothing compares to that experience.
Guys, I still fondly remember the one where I met you for the first time. ESC 2017 in Warsaw.
ESC, that's the European Skeptics Congress. Yeah, that was fun.
We should do it again.
And we can, Pontus.
Annika's right. This fall, in Vienna, Austria.
Yeah, between the 9th and 11th of September, just go to exo.org and register now. Early bird prices still apply.
Yeah, and there will be speakers from all over Europe talking about all kinds of stuff.
Indeed. Science, education, policymaking, you name it.
Not to mention all the networking and all the fun we will have.
So come and meet us in Vienna. We're looking forward to seeing you there.
Yeah.
See you
at the European Skeptics Congress 2022.
And now, a reading from the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham. I'm with Tim Mendham. Hello, Tim.
Hello, Richard.
Hello. I've come here to Skeptics Headquarters. I don't often come here. Every now and then I'll come to Skeptics Headquarters.
Skeptics Towers.
Skeptics Towers.
This is a major enterprise, mate.
I know it's a serious place because you have the kookaburras laughing outside sometimes.
That's right. Well, that's the emblem of the Skeptics, you see, the Australian kookaburra.
Now, talking about funny things, the latest issue of our journal, The Skeptic, is about to hit the post boxes of subscribers. But it's already hit the inboxes of people who subscribe digitally.
That's right. That's correct, Richard.
Yes.
It's very well put.
Thank you.
It is currently at the printers, so the printers takes a while and then you've got to go through the mailing house and that sort of stuff. But the digital copy is out for people who subscribe to the digital.
Like me.
Like you, or who can get the hard copy and the digital for free. And that's a real plus.
Yes.
Okay, so this is, the latest issue is volume 42, number 2, which means that we've been going for 42 years with this magazine, right? And Richard was reading it as a small child, and I was editing it for the 42 years.
Not such a small child, but I certainly was reading the early issues. I remember in the first 5 years of the publication, I would have been reading some of those issues.
Yeah, and the magazine's changed a lot over the years.
A lot,
actually,
yes.
But,
and people can find that out for themselves.
They can look at all the old issues, including the very first issue, which is 4 pages.
For free.
For free.
Yes.
Absolutely. And this was a classic copy of the magazine. It was sort of like one sheet of paper folded.
Yes.
And it was cute the way it was done. But, I mean, it did improve gradually. And
what was the big headline? Perth still there?
Perth not flooded, I think
Perth
it was.
Not flooded. or Doris Stokes. Wrong. Police and of course a big picture of James Randi on the cover.
Because Doris Stokes wrong is just a headline that we had ready to go and just threw it in every time. It was a common occurrence.
And she was a popular medium at the time.
And it's interesting that the early stories were all about sort of predictions and psychics, and that was the main area. Alternative medicine hardly cropped up.
Not for a
days.
While.
Yeah, the first issue had something, but it was psychic surgery.
Right.
I mean, people dig their hands inside your body to pull out all the cancerous tumours.
Yeah.
But yes, alternative medicine is, of course, now a staple, if you like, of skeptical activity.
It certainly is.
And the bugbear and one of the most serious aspects of what we do. But yeah, it's taken a while to actually become a core part of the skeptical discussion.
Things come and go. But what can readers look forward to when they do get either their digital copy or their physical copy?
Right. Well, the main feature of this issue, we always have a big feature which is central on a particular theme, and this time It's on science and pretenders for science. And basically the idea is that there's a lot of pseudoscience that comes along and tags on the coattails of science.
Yes.
Now, these pseudosciences always say that, well, science doesn't understand and science can't answer.
We're waiting for science to catch up.
That's right.
I've heard that mostly from homeopaths.
Can science explain love?
I've
That's one of my favourites.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, all those sort of things.
Science doesn't know everything.
Science doesn't know everything.
Science doesn't know
and there's
everything.
energies unknown to science.
As soon as you hear somebody, they're red flags. As soon as you hear someone saying to you, well, science doesn't know everything, then you've got them. You know, you don't know what you're talking about.
Science doesn't know everything.
Exactly.
But the thing is that they always say science doesn't know everything, but we do.
But we do, yes.
Yes, and of course the trouble is with these is that when they do find a scientist who supports their idea, they grab hold of him because they think a scientist has imprimatur, has a reputation. See, look, a scientist agrees with it, but you were just rubbishing science, and now you've got one on your side. Yeah, okay. You'll always find a scientist somewhere to support.
You will always find, yes. So a PhD who...
a FUD by any name.
Yes.
But, okay, this issue has a big feature. We're looking at science pretenders, if you like, across various ideas. We have a couple of articles which actually explains the whole concept and how to spot the difference. Mm-hmm. And then we look at areas like quantum quackery and quantum pop stuff. Have you ever heard quantum used amongst psychics, Richard?
Never. What's this term? Quantum? What?
No.
Frequent. I mean, let me preempt what you're about to say. There's an article in me. Let me preempt what you're about to say. There's an article by me in the magazine about the mind, body, spirit. And the number of times over the last 20 years I've seen and heard the word quantum, and mind, body, spirit is stunning.
It was almost every time, I find.
Yes.
And it's dragged up at a sort of, this is the science doesn't understand, but they keep quoting quantum, and obviously it doesn't take long to sort of push into the conversation. You realise they don't understand quantum.
Not a clue.
But it's a handy word, because quantum is weird.
Yeah.
I mean...
cutting edge and new and blah, blah, blah.
Feynman once said that if you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't.
Yeah.
But, I mean, so that quantum is dragged up a lot. So there's an article here, Quantum Quackery, which is an older article done from the US, actually. But it's core to this. We have an article about the media appropriating science the other way to drag it into pseudoscience and to have that imprimatur of a scientist commenting. And that's an article that you wrote, Richard, along with an interview with Brian Dunning concerning his
movie, of course, Science Friction, the new Brian Dunning documentary,
right.
Yes.
Which you can look at online.
Yeah.
It's very excellent, actually. It quotes a lot of scientists complaining, or just stating their experiences of how they were used and abused by documentary makers and things like that.
Hardly done by.
Yeah. Okay, well, then we have a long article which looks at archaeology and pseudo-archaeology, especially in pop culture. So you only need to mention Indiana Jones and Lara Croft and all these people to realise there's a lot of stuff which is not very scientific about how archaeology is presented.
It's like forensics is presented on TV. Is they do it in one afternoon or something like that.
Yeah, I know. And this goes way back into the history of archaeology as people sort of putting forward pop theories and sort of pretty superficial theories about archaeology. So we cover a lot of that science pretender stuff in the issue. We also, as you say, have an article about the mind-body spirit.
Mind, body, wallet, mind, body, spirit.
Which should be, convention, exhibition, which you go to quite regularly.
Yes.
And as you say, there are predictable surprises.
That's what I called the article, predictable surprises, because every now and then you'll see something and say, oh, I haven't seen that before, but you can predict that's going to happen.
Yes. Or there are things you have seen before.
Or many things I've seen before, yes.
We also have an interesting article about the Australian Anti-Vaccination Network, which has been trying to take the children's vaccinations against the COVID to court to have it stopped.
Yes.
And they didn't do that well, actually.
Not very well at all.
There's a punchline, which I'll give away. The court didn't actually think they had any justification for their thoughts at all. So, they have no standing in the argument. We then have a few other articles looking at what we call the Hall of Shame, which is looking about people making claims, quack claims, pseudoscientific claims, dangerous claims in alternative medicine areas, and how well the regulators respond to that.
That's good.
And well is not is the term loosely used.
Yes.
There's times they don't respond very well.
Right.
So we look at a range of different regulators and a range of these different claims as to how they have responded. And then, of course, we have the usual things, the usual sort of columns about sort of what goes around is one of my favourites.
Yes,
I've read that
which we often hear on the Skeptic Zone.
Skeptic Zone. This one we have about SRI, Stanford Research Institute, Uri Geller, Clark and Puthoff.
Yes.
Laurel and Hardy of
Psi.
Yes,
That's James Randi called them.
Randy called them. So a lot of other things, and a crossword puzzle, of course.
Crossword puzzle.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff to read in this issue.
And letters to the editor.
News.
Including one by me, I read.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I wrote a letter to you and you published it.
Occasionally do actually publish. I don't know why I publish anything by you, but I
don't know why you do
that's the way it goes. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff to have a look at in the magazine. There's always one sample issue, which we'll have up fairly soon, actually, on the website, so you can get a teaser.
Yeah.
But we have these things regularly, all these features and articles and what goes around and that sort of stuff.
It's a great magazine. Look, folks, if you don't subscribe to the Skeptic magazine from Australia, give it a go. Just go to skeptics.com.au. You can easily subscribe. And if you get the physical copy, you get the digital copy for free. So you can read it on the train or in the bath or whatever you do.
Or you can keep the digital copy and leave the hard copy at your local homeopath's waiting room.
That's the way. So that's volume number, what was it again?
Volume 42, number 2.
Oh, 42. That's meaningful.
That's for June.
That's for June. June 22. Tim Mendham, the editor of that fine journal, The Skeptic. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Hi, this is Rob Palmer. I'm a Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia team member and a columnist for The Skeptical Inquirer. I also do a fair amount of public speaking on topics of interest to skeptics. This is an invitation for you to attend my upcoming Zoom talk. Let me list some of the important topics I'll cover. Ghosts haunt houses and are routinely recorded in photos and on audio. Consciousness can leave a body and do things like remote viewing. In fact, the soul's been weighed. It's 21 grams. People have near-death experiences and glimpse the other side. There is also proof of reincarnation. Demonic possession is a thing. And of course, mediums can communicate with the dead. We see that all the time on TV. Paranormal and supernatural claims like these are commonly believed, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So just how good is the evidence for any of these things? Join me as I am interviewed about all of this at the next RFRX meeting. That's a weekly presentation series held over Zoom by Recovering from Religion, a nonprofit which helps people struggling with issues surrounding religious doubt. The Zoom session begins at 8 p.m. Eastern Time in the US on Monday, June 20th. That's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 21st in Sydney. The session will go live at that time at this link, tinyurl.com/weekly RFRX. No registration is required. If you can't catch it live, a recording will eventually be uploaded to the RFR YouTube channel at tinyurl.com/RFRX playlist, as well as to the RFR audio podcast series. Funny, but I have a premonition that some of you listening to this will join me. Don't prove me wrong.
Time once again to dive into those archives, those digital archives from around the world. Normally it's at Trove, at trove.nla.gov.au, but today I thought we'd go once more back to the United States of America. Quite apt, I guess. And we're going to be looking for reports over the years. And believe me, there are many, but I've selected a few of people being conned, scammed, bilked by psychics. Now, of course, when I say psychics, just pretend that you can see air quotes, because as far as we know, there's no such thing as a psychic. There are people claiming to be psychic. So if I ever say the word psychic, that's what I mean. People who claim to have psychic powers, whether they truly and honestly believe they have psychic powers or whether they surely know they do not. The generic term for these people is simply psychic. And it's easier to say that than alleged or claimed or whatever. And our first return today comes from Arlington Heights Daily Herald Suburban, Chicago, dated the 14th of December 2013, with the heading, Police. Psychic charged nearly $1 million for curse removal. Associated Press. Los Angeles. Brian James was having a tough time. His finances weren't in order. His emotional health wasn't great, and his love life needed a boost. That's when the 25-year-old Los Angeles man met Michelle Morgan, who worked in the San Fernando Valley at an office with a neon sign out front proclaiming psychic readings. All he had to do to solve his problems was to get a pesky curse removed. But it would cost him plenty, according to a private investigator who James hired to look into the psychic. 2 years later, authorities say James is out nearly $1 million. And Morgan, whose real name is April Lee, and her husband, Michael Johnson, are free on bail after they were charged with grand theft, attempted grand theft, and extortion. They are due in court on December 19 for a pre-trial hearing. They were arrested in November, when Lee and James travelled to San Jose to collect a final payment of $500,000 his mother was supposed to give them after selling her house. Instead, authorities said, the psychic was surprised to find police waiting for her. Lee's attorney, James E. Silverstein, declined to discuss the allegations in detail Friday, but said his client maintains her innocence.
It's not a crime to be a psychic,
Silverstein said. Prosecutors say, whatever the job or title, it's a crime to steal someone's money.
You have to get away from thinking of it as proving or disproving spirits and curses and look for the fraud.
Santa Clara County Deputy District Attorney Sherry Bollard told the Los Angeles Daily News, which first reported the story. James was having emotional, financial, and relationship issues, said New York private investigator Bob Nygaard, who ultimately helped him build a case against Lee, 28, and her 32-year-old husband.
So it's basically made him the perfect mark,
he told the Associated Press. Sorry, Bob, for that bad impersonation of you. Bob Nygaard is a terrific bloke. I met him at DragonCon once or twice over the years. Wow, what a character, what a character. We read on. He said there was a specific person James had a romantic interest in, but the psychic told him he couldn't approach her until the curse was lifted.
Because if he were to do so, her alleged curse removal work would fail, and my client's romantic interest would die,
Nygaard said. Instead, he said Lee claimed she would become a go-between for the couple, and sent James text messages from her cell phone that she claimed to have forwarded from the woman. One said the woman couldn't wait to get together with him once that curse was broken. James kept forking over money, much of it from his mother's retirement savings, Nygaard said, until he finally became suspicious and approached the woman directly. When he learnt she'd never sent him any messages, he went to the police. There he was mocked by an officer who told him what a sucker he had been for giving money to a psychic. Nygaard said that's when he sought out the private investigator, a retired policeman who has recovered tens of thousands of dollars for victims of other psychics. And that makes a very good point there. We don't know what really happened when he went to the police, whether there was a true mocking tone, which there could have been. But ultimately, we remember try not to blame the victim, and people will go to psychics for all sorts of reasons. And our next item comes from the Fairfeild Ledger, Fairfield, Iowa, dated Wednesday, July 21st, 1982, quite a while back. Following psychic's advice costs Eldora farmer $7,500. Is it unlawful to charge an Iowa farmer thousands of dollars to tell him he can regain the affections of his girlfriend by washing himself with a tomato, sleeping with a shoe under his pillow, and doing unusual things with eggs, pins, and wooden matches? Police say a psychic instructed an Eldora farmer in those acts and more to, quote, rid his body of evil spirits, end quote. But they say the Polk County Attorney's Office has ruled that no charges can be filed against the psychic because they have yet to prove she violated any local or state laws. Investigators said the farmer, who is in his mid-20s, did everything from sell corn to cash an insurance policy to pay the psychic, spending as much as $7,500 since last September. Detective Ron Warren, who said he was not finished with his investigation, said he would file charges if possible. But until then, he said, he would not release the names of the psychic or the farmer. The farmer said he contacted the psychic through a small newspaper advertisement.
I was just curious at first,
he told police.
The first time she just wanted $45 or something.
But after the first meeting, the farmer said the psychic requested he buy her a gold necklace and about $100 worth of groceries.
She told me my body was full of evil,
the man told police.
She was going to rid me of it.
The psychic reportedly directed the man to wrap a tomato in a handkerchief and rub it over his head and body. He was then to stuff the tomato in a shoe and put it under his pillow. Finally, he brought the tomato and $1,500 in cash to the psychic, police said. The psychic is said to have, quote, dug around inside the tomato until she finally dug out a small replica of a devil's head. Part of the evil in the young man's body had been removed, the psychic reportedly claimed, but there still was some left. On another occasion, the man was to push 7 needles into 7 matchsticks and bury them in a certain location. The needles were supposed to get rid of 7 evil spirits. Police said the man was also told to do something with a fresh egg and bring it back to the psychic with $2,000. The farmer followed the instructions, police said, and when he gave the egg to the psychic, she prayed over a bucket of water and blood and, quote, turned the money over to the spirits, end quote. By the end of June, after doling out more payments and even buying toys for the psychic's children, officers said the man apparently realized the psychic was not helping. The letters he was writing to his former girlfriend were still unanswered. Oh, that is a bit of a sad story, all the way back there in 1982. And now we come to the Panama City News Herald, dated the 1st of August 1997. Spiritual scam? Police say psychic bilked elderly widow out of $300,000. The Associated Press. Delland. Psychic Kitty Wilson convinced 81-year-old Mary Porter that there was a 200-year-old curse on her family and house. The only way to lift the curse, the psychic told the elderly widow, was to give her $300,000, police said. Now, Mrs. Wilson, who faces federal charges, can't be found.
She still may be in the area,
Volusia County Sheriff spokesman Gary Davison said Thursday. 2 warrants for her arrest were issued Wednesday. She faces felony charges of scheming to defraud in excess of $100,000 and exploiting the elderly in excess of $100,000. Circuit Judge Ed Sanders set bail at $1.5 million. Mrs. Porter began visiting Ms. Wilson's business in May, seeking guidance after her husband's death. She told investigators that she was deeply depressed at the time. The psychic convinced the elderly woman that her family was suffering from a 200-year-old curse that caused misery, health problems, and bad luck. Ms. Wilson told Mrs. Porter that, at a cost of $12,000 per person, she could pay penance to release the suffering spirits of 24 friends and relatives who had perished in a shipwreck in Europe. That money would be dumped in Devil's Triangle, she told the widow. Mrs. Porter was told that another $45,000 was needed to lift a curse from her home and some inherited funds. She withdrew large amounts of money over a 2-month period from banks in Deland, Daytona Beach, Ormond Beach, and Orlando. In at least one case, Ms. Wilson posed as Mrs. Porter's daughter, telling bankers that they planned to open an Italian restaurant. Ms. Wilson even bought a plate of spaghetti to an Orlando bank to bolster her story, police said. Investigators said Ms. Wilson exploited Mrs. Porter's deep religious belief, gaining her confidence by telling her she knew Mother Teresa and had a close acquaintance who was a priest in the Vatican. Ms. Wilson ran her psychic business at 2 DeLand-era locations with several family members. Investigators said they hadn't decided if others would be charged. Sergeant Wayne Barrs said there may be other victims who are too ashamed to admit they were scammed.
I would say there are many other victims out there,
Barrs said.
We definitely want this lady in jail so she can't victimize other people.
And there we go. Just some of the interesting stories over the years. People being bilked, scammed, conned, whatever word you want to use, out of funds by people pretending to have mystical psychic powers. But you don't need to pretend to have mystical psychic powers to enjoy researching articles, information, stories from the past, and you can do that by visiting any local archive in your country, or if you're in Australia or anywhere around the world, of course, you can visit Trove at trove.nla.gov.au. But no matter where you search, you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast, and a big thank you to Brian Dunning and family for putting up with me and my jet lag. Oh my goodness me, it's hit me like a ton of bricks. I haven't been to the States in, 2.5 years, and jet lag normally knocks me around, but this time it's like a double sledgehammer. I don't know what's going on. Coming up on next week's show, it's a bit of a mystery. I haven't had much time to think about it. I know I have a section in Trove called Oddball. So very strange stories coming up in the Trove section next week. And the Book of Tim next week looks at Usher. But for this week, from the land of big feet, Bigfoots, and snow-capped mountains, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Bend, Oregon. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.